The product of a joint ship design known as the Victor Initiative Project by the galaxy's two main rival shipbuilders, Rendili Star Drive and Kuat Drive Yards, delivered a warship which was able to challenge the already established Venator Class Star Destroyer. Its design objective was to address a significant deficiency in the Venator class in straight-up ship-to-ship battle against separatist warships during the Clone Wars. Although introduced into the Galactic Republic Navy in the latter stages of the Clone Wars, the Victory Class Star Destroyer would prove to last the test of time as a capable warship by serving a number of different factions including the Galactic Empire, the Rebel Alliance, the New Republic and the Imperial Remnant. They much later went on to also serve the Galactic Federation of Free Alliances. A ship project designer known as Wallax Belix, who years later joined the Rebel Alliance by defecting from the Galactic Empire, developed the Victory Class SD for the Republic war effort alongside Bevel Levelis. Around the same time as designing the Victory Class, Belix also initially designed the Gladiator Class Star Destroyer to serve as an escort vessel for the Victory Class. As the warship was introduced into service in 20 BBY, the Victory 1 class was deployed into several roles including planetary defense, planetary assault, ground troop support, and ship-to-ship combat. Alongside the existing wedge-shaped Venator Class Star Destroyer, at a length of 1,137 metres, a Victory class held a slightly shorter length at 900 metres, but its outer appearance would mimic much closer to the later wedge-shaped design of the Imperial Class Star Destroyer once the Empire was formed. The standard armaments of a Victory 1 class held 10 quad turbo lasers, 40 double turbo lasers, 80 concussion missile tube launchers, and 10 tractor beam projectors, which meant the Victory class was more than a match for most contemporary opponents. Introduced in 19 BBY prior to the end of the Clone Wars, a handful of Victory 2 class Star Destroyers were produced, with some improvements including a different armament configuration and propulsion systems. The most notable changes were the addition of 10 heavy ion cannons, which replaced the concussion missiles, and an increased number of turbo lasers. As the Republic transitioned into the Galactic Empire, the dynamics of the galaxy changed too, from fighting in the conflict of a war to managing insurgent uprisings against the new Imperial government. The need for the Victory class to operate as a Star Destroyer was no longer necessary, and instead the standard armament's destructive power were lessened in favour of enough power to disable enemy ships and capturing insurgents for interrogation. Situated on the vessel's port and starboard were a set of atmospheric manoeuvring surfaces which enabled the ship to enter the upper levels of planetary atmospheres. They provided greater precision when engaging as part of ground attack operations, as well as pursuing enemy ships attempting to escape by tracking them towards the planet's surface. The propulsion systems of the Victory 1 class SD were excellent in terms of its Class 1 hyperdrive capability, allowing Victory ships to reach their destinations in half the time of an Imperial Class Star Destroyer, which held a Class 2 hyperdrive. However, the Victory's sublight speed was not so good in terms of its underpowered LF9 ion engines, which could not produce sufficient acceleration to engage quicker enemy vessels in ship-to-ship combat. Prior to the birth of the Empire, the new Victory 2 class was designed with the improved Horse-Kessel drive systems, comprising of 3 thruster engines. 2 modified variant designs of the Victory class, named the Harrow and the Protector, held 2 main thrusters and 2 auxiliary thrusters in between. Some Victory class SDs were modified with 3 main thrusters and 4 auxiliary thrusters, matching the design of the larger Imperial class SD. For an early class of Star Destroyer, the Victory 1 class held a strong shield rating of 3,200 SBD and 1,520 RU, meaning the values of how much damage the vessel could withstand before the hull could take damage and begin to break up. While many Victory 1 class vessels were still in Imperial Navy service during the Galactic Civil War, their shield and hull ratings still matched very closely to the Imperial 1 class SDs. Although the Imperial 2 class SDs held an upgraded shield rating of 5,760 SBD and a hull rating of 2,722 RU. However, the Victory 2 class had a reduced shield rating of 2,880 SBD and a hull rating of 1,360 RU. But the reason for the weakened shield and hull ratings was an energy transfer of power to the ion engines and the ion cannon weaponry. Additionally, the Victory class's SD's hull was fitted with Durasteel, which was an incredibly strong and versatile metal alloy. Durasteel was capable of withstanding blistering heat, frigid cold and tremendous physical stress. As a result, the various changes to the Victory 2 class, the cost difference of replacing the powerful concussion missiles and the increased number of turbo laser batteries and improved propulsion systems reduced the cost to build the vessel by 7 million credits, from 57 million to 50 million. On board the Victory 1 class Star Destroyer's complement consisted up to a maximum of 8,100 metric tons of cargo. Held within the ship's hangar bays were several ground assault vehicles like the AT-AT, the Juggernaut A5, troop transports and floating fortresses. It also held 2 TIE fighter squadrons of 24 starfighters and dropships. The required optimal crew to operate the Victory 1 class was 4,798 officers and enlisted, 402 gunners, and transported up to 2,040 troopers. However, although the Victory 2 class held an identical complement, it carried a slightly increased crew and passengers of 5,881 officers and enlisted, 226 gunners, and transported up to 1,600 troopers, making a difference of 467 more. Both Victory classes held enough consumables to sustain a crew of up to 4 years. After the Battle of Yavin in 0 ABY, up to 100 Victory class SDs were ordered to receive a refit at QAT drive yards for extensive system upgrades. These upgrades included completion of TIE hangars, new engines, weapon systems and increased shielding, and were scheduled for completion within a year. However, during that period the Empire were experiencing Dunian shortages. Dunium was a heavy metal primarily used in starship hull construction. It gave the Imperial Navy ships their characteristic white-grey colour. The Dunium was needed to replace hull plates originally required for these warships. Instead, they were transferred to waiting nearby Imperial Class Star Destroyers that were undergoing servicing. This effectively kept 100 Victory Class Star Destroyers in dry dock for 2 years. In 2 ABY, an alternative deep red coloured alloy metal meeting the Imperial military specifications called Harvard was used to service the 100 Victory Class Star Destroyers hull plates and were processed and welded to the ship's frames. However, it was deemed too arduous for standard processing, and so this was not repeated. After the fall of Emperor Palpatine's reign, these vessels eventually became part of the Crimson Command, serving under the Imperial warlord Truton Teradok. The internal decks and compartments of the vessel changed very little between the classes of Victory Star Destroyer, while the warships served the Galactic Republic. It was only when the Republic transitioned into the Galactic Empire did these layouts to the vessel begin to be refitted. Beginning at the frontal area of the ship, this part housed the vehicle storage, hangar bays, vehicle maintenance, and hangar entry port. This area of the vessel was used to deploy its Imperial Navy craft and starfighters, but also importantly to capture and pull in enemy ships for inspection. Moving backwards towards the ship's middle sections were the crew living and training decks, including the living quarters of the crew and also the combat personnel living section. Moving deeper towards the wider wedge stern part of the Victory class, this was where the engineering section housed the vessel's power cells and engine control core. Situated just above the engineering section sat the decks belonging to the Imperial officers aboard the ship, known as the Officers' Row, and slightly further back was the area called the Detention Centre. Moving up into the conning tower section, the first large area belonged to System Controls, which housed huge numbers of enlisted technicians and junior officers, reviewing and operating the ship's functions. High above the rest of the sections was of course the command section, which included the main bridge and was led by the most senior staff aboard, including Imperial officers at the rank of lieutenant and of course the captain. Considered mostly inferior to the more powerful Imperial class SDs, it was expected by the majority that the Victory class would be decommissioned following the newer SD's designs entering into Imperial Navy service. The growth and threat of the rebellion and the insurgent groups across the galaxy eventually led to the Galactic Empire requiring the Victory class to remain in service as an available capital ship for duty. At the beginning of the Galactic Civil War, the Alliance seized several of them, but all were presumed to have been lost or recaptured. Some ships would eventually see service with the New Republic, others would remain in use by Pellion's Imperial remnant, and at least one, the Protector, saw action during the Yuzhan-Vong War at the Battle of Borosk. The Victory class's external systems included crucial defensive and offensive capabilities. The communications tower was located on the top of the vessel's conning tower and placed between the Victory class's 2 deflector shield globes. It enabled long-range communication across the known galaxy. The deflector shield generator domes, which each held shield projector vanes, projected both ray and particle shields. To generate the deflector shields, they required a massive amount of energy drawn from the Star Destroyer's main reactor via power generators located deep within the command tower. The aft targeting systems were crucial to the Victory class during combat scenarios, as targeting computers were equipped with some form of sensor jammer to avoid being hit. The more sophisticated targeting computers could swiftly achieve a target lock on the enemy. A targeting system was also necessary where possible in order to shoot down missiles. Forward observation stations were mounted on each end of the conning tower. However, these were not continued into the later Imperial class designs, for the possible reason they were too exposed to attack by the enemy. The underside of the Victory class held a solar ionized reactor, which used hypermatter to create a miniature star inside the reactor chamber to draw huge amounts of energy from its core. As part of the top front section, a sensor cluster was situated with detection modes to include detector energy receptors, full spectrum transceivers, and lifeform indicators. Victory class Star Destroyers were used continually after the Galactic Empire's defeat at the Battle of Endor, and many were commandeered by Imperial warlords to bolster their Imperial fleets. Notably, in 8 ABY, Grand Admiral Thrawn returned from the unknown regions to take control of the fragmented Empire. In doing so, Thrawn gathered many Victory class Star Destroyers still in Imperial service as part of his large Imperial Navy fleet, due to a lack of the more powerful Imperial class SDs. In 10 ABY, Victory class Star Destroyers were also part of the Dark Empire's Operation Shadowhand at the Battle of Balmorra. The battle was fought in the wake of the Galactic Emperor Palpatine's latest death in a clone body. Following the Yuuzhan Vong War, the Galactic Federation of Free Alliances commissioned an updated version of the Victory for use as pirate hunters across the territories. Some of these new vessels were fitted with large turrets on the upper hull, each housing a huge asteroid tug tractor beam sold to the Galactic Alliance Defense Force by Lando Calrissian. That's all for this video. For more Imperial Explained videos, please give a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and as always, long live the Empire!